The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
High-profile sex trafficking trial begins. I'm Salji Ingrasso, Fox News. She's been described as Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, partner, even confidant. But whatever the title is, she's on trial for allegedly transporting minor girls so they could be sexually abused.
Ghislaine Maxwell is facing 6 counts in her federal trial, including sex trafficking a minor. In opening arguments, prosecutors told the Manhattan jurors that she groomed victims for her boss and romantic partner Jeffrey Epstein. But Maxwell's attorneys say prosecutors are using her as a scapegoat since Epstein is dead. The first witness prosecutors called was a pilot for Epstein for nearly 30 years. Larry Visosky testified that they were in the air almost every 4 days, mostly to Epstein's homes in New York, Palm Beach, Florida, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the Virgin Islands. Visosky had to be subpoenaed earlier for flight logs. Some of Epstein's victims have said they traveled on his plane with him and his other male guests. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The White House postpones remarks on supply chains.
This White House often moves events around within a day. They might tell us the president got held up on something, he's going to be a few hours late. But they told us that his remarks about the supply chains following a meeting with CEOs have been pushed all the way back to Wednesday, and they didn't tell us until about 5 minutes before a group of reporters, myself included, was going to be taken across West Executive Drive to the EEOB to hear him speak in an amphitheater. The White House told us that the president just wanted to spend more time with CEOs who came to the White House.
That's Fox's Peter Ducey. Decorations unveiled for Joe and Jill Biden's first White House Christmas. Honor frontline workers who persevered during the COVID-19 pandemic. Asian shares are mixed. Wall Street share prices steadied Monday from last week's slide. America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Organized gangs of criminals continue to rob high-end stores throughout California.
Friday, a dozen thieves in ski masks ransacked the Home Depot for crowbars and sledgehammers, overwhelming one customer who tried to stop them.
And we tried to actually stop them. We closed the front entrance, and they put their sledgehammers up like whoever got in the way, they were going to hurt them.
Thieves also hit stores on Melrose, a Louis Vuitton and Saks in Beverly Hills, a CVS in South L.A., Nordstrom's in the Valley, and several stores in Midtown. In the Bay Area, thieves hit a Nordstrom, Apple, a Lululemon, and several stores in Union Square.
Fox's William Lajeunesse. Police in cities with high-profile shopping districts are increasing patrols. A House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot will vote Wednesday to hold a former Justice Department official in contempt, demanding criminal charges against a defiant witness for a second time as answers are sought about the violent attack. Some Democrats are pushing for Pete Buttigieg to run for president during the next election cycle.
It sounds like supporters of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg see an opportunity with an aging president struggling in the polls. In his role, Buttigieg is front and center with the new infrastructure law. So he's getting to go out and sell infrastructure and getting to do warm, fuzzy interviews. Minnesota Republican Congressman Tom Emmer told Fox's Sunday Morning Futures the Buttigieg buzz should be sounding alarms at the White House with Biden loyalists.
He can run again in 2024 if that's what he wants to do, but he's going to lose. And it's not a good sign. It's never a good sign when members of your own party are literally talking about who's going to replace you, and you haven't even been in the job for a full year yet.
In Washington, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Lee Elder, the first black golfer to play in the Masters, dies at age 87. Elder captured 4 PGA Tour victories. I'm Sal Giangrasso. This is Fox News.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right, Jose?
You are correct, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to keep saying that because it's always rewarding to know that you're going to be right every time you say something. All right, let's take a look at Zemi Ikotny. Slim pickings today here. The Daily News. Our view. As the world reacts to Omicron, take steps to protect yourself. I'd have never thought of that myself in a million years, Jose.
And wear your seatbelt.
Yeah, wear your seatbelt. Don't take any wooden nickels.
Put on clean underwear.
Never leave the house unless you're wearing clean skivvy drawers, because if you were in a car accident, you had to go to the hospital, and you weren't wearing clean skivvies, you'd be pretty embarrassed, right?
They wouldn't know which is the new one and which is the old one.
Right. Okay, so here's what the Daily News says. With the announcement of yet another Wuhan virus variant, governments around the world sprang into action, with some such as Japan closing their borders to foreigners and imposing other restrictions. But much remains unknown about Omicron, except that we had to skip over 2 letters in the Greek alphabet to get to it. For instance, Z, XI, we couldn't possibly use that. Yeah, according to the World Health Organization.
Who?
First base. It's not yet clear whether Omicron is more transmissible compared to other variants, including Delta. although the number of people testing positive in parts of, well, I don't know if I should say this or not, South Africa, I'll be branded a racist, affected by this variant has risen. Researchers are still trying to determine whether it's because of the variant itself or other factors. It's not yet clear whether infection with Omicron causes serious symptoms, more serious symptoms than infections with other variants, including Delta. All variants of Wuhan virus, including the Delta variant that is dominant worldwide, can cause severe disease or death, in particular for the most vulnerable people, and thus prevention is always key, WHO reported. Preliminary evidence suggests that there may be an increased risk of reinfection with Omicron than with other variants for those who have had Wuhan virus before. But again, WHO noted that information is currently limited. WHO reported it's working with technical partners to understand the potential why bother? If unless you got a lot of time to waste, don't bother reading this editorial. All right, and the Post isn't a whole lot better. Here's the Post. Classroom teachers and school bus drivers deserve our gratitude. How about talk show hosts? On Wednesday evening, the Guam Education Board gave the go signal for the return of face-to-face learning for tens of thousands of Guam public school students. That decision to reopen schools for full in-person learning beginning Monday threw a challenge at school teachers and administrators. The decision basically gave them just one workday, Thursday, to prepare because Friday was the government of Guam's Black Friday Thanksgiving holiday. So Thursday was a workday? That's what they're, they couldn't work on Friday because that was a Black Friday, a special holiday, so they only had Thursday to work. So they're supposed to go in and work on Thursday. Something's a little out of socket here. Somehow, teachers in general managed to do their job during the full return of almost 24,000 students to 41 school campuses, though some teachers had voiced worry about being able to adequately prepare to keep the students at a safe distance between each other in classrooms. Some 2,000 students have opted to stay with online model of learning. Prior to Monday, the students alternated showing up on campus every other day, with each school population divided into two groups. But recognizing that students have missed out on in-person learning, essentially losing half their attendance for more than a year, the Education Board decided to accelerate the full return to in-person learning. Some teachers and their union voiced their thoughts that there was simply not enough time to have all the face-to-face and students return. But teachers, being teachers, showed up in the classrooms Monday because they felt it's their duty to make the most of what they were given and for the sake of the school children rather than show defiance by skipping class en masse. For the teachers who tried to do their best with the situation they were thrust into, we thank you. We also thank Department of Public Works school bus drivers. Sadly and unfortunately, here's a note from DPW, Public Works Deputy Director Linda Ibanez. Sadly and unfortunately, we're not made aware and or consulted with regarding school opening. So it was a surprise for them too, apparently. As a result of the disconnect, there was a delay in transporting kids to and from school. The school bus drivers are committed to providing safe transport to our children. Of course, there will be some delays. Like any opening of school, there are several delays that come in the process, but the school bus drivers adapt and make changes to adjust to the school routes and schools, of course, based on the transport. And, this is just another non-editorial, basically, is what it amounts to.
They probably didn't have time to prepare, Bob.
Yeah, they were just told yesterday afternoon they were going to have to do an editorial for this morning. Yeah, come on, you guys. You got to work harder at it than this. Okay, that takes us to the card. And this is what I've got on the card for today. Starting out with Jem Selman versus Paul Zerzan. That was just too important an issue to try to deal with it all in one show. Next is Verona Resort versus Tourism. And then Pacific News Center versus the Daily News and the Post. A contrast between a news outlet that thinks that running press releases is being a part of the media, and a couple of media outlets that actually went beyond the four corners of a press release. It all deals with dueling press releases between Rory and Joanne. And then I've got Renewable Energy and Clint versus Reality, CNN versus Kenosha. And this launches us into a lot of other different things that have popped up in the news, all of which are examples of the media only paying attention to news stories that fits their narrative. Like Waukesha has almost completely disappeared already.
What? Who? What?
Yeah. And, of course, we know why. What happened in Washington at Waukesha, an SUV ran through a parade. That's the way CNN reported it. And, of course, we don't want to get into the details because the details don't come close to fitting the narrative. The details are that a black man, an African-American who posted all kinds of hate whitey stuff on the internet for no reason, plowed through a crowd of people at a parade, killing 5 of them. So the idea is to get this out of the way as fast as possible, kind of like Katie Couric cleaning up after Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg was critical of, what's his name, Kaepernick. What's his first name? Colin Kaepernick, yeah. Yeah, Ruth Bader, I mentioned this the other day, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when asked about, or actually being interviewed by Katie Couric, said, you know, what Kaepernick did was dumb. It was just, there's no excuse for it. It was really dumb. So when Couric ran that interview on TV, she cut those parts out. She didn't want to embarrass Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was the sweetheart of the left, by having her say such politically incorrect things on TV.
This just in from the lens of the left. Ruth Ginsburg is now a white supremacist.
How could that possibly be?
That's through the lens of the left.
Of the left.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So going on, we've got, I've got, in the same string here, I've got the left versus Rittenhouse, Turley versus the media cartel, and winding up with Turley versus abortion. You know, there's a really seminal abortion case coming before the Supreme Court this week. And Jonathan Turley, in his usual fashion, clearly lays out what all the issues are and what we can expect or what the possibilities are from the Supreme Court. So it's, as usual, it's a very good article. All right, first item on the card, Verona Resort versus Tourism. I have a petition for a writ of I told you so that I filed probably about a year ago. And for once, I hope I'm wrong. But my writ of I told you so will allow me to, I hate to use the word gloat, but take credit for being prescient when our tourism industry never comes back to the way it was in 2019, when we brought in 1.6 million tourists. I'm predicting that our tourist industry will never recover to that level. and there will be a lot of outlets that will go out of business. You'll see hotels with boarded up windows down in San Vitores because we're just never going to build back up to where we were before. And I explain my reasoning. In today's paper, there's an article in today's Daily News, Notice of Opportunity to Bid for Hotel. It's a district court bankruptcy case, and it's Polaris Guam LLC, DBA Verona Resort and Spa, Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So it's a Chapter 7, not a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. A Chapter 11 bankruptcy is a bankruptcy where the bankrupt is allowed to develop a plan, is able to restructure its debts, and to continue operating with the hope that many of its creditors will be paid off and the business will be able to stay in business. Once in a great while it works, but not very often. The classic example of Chapter 11 bankruptcy are Continental Airlines. Continental Airlines went Chapter 11 4 times and was able to keep on flying. Didn't crash during that time. But a Chapter 7 is called a liquidation bankruptcy. In a Chapter 7, the trustee in bankruptcy issues a notice to creditors, and everyone who claims that the bankrupt owes it money files a notice of claim. The trustee marshals the assets of the bankrupt, determines what the bankrupt has, what disposition to make of the assets, and then divides the assets up amongst the creditors in accordance with statute. The bankruptcy of the Verona Resort is a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They're throwing in the towel. Now, this is, of course, serious, and of course, we would hope that it's a one-off, that we'll never see another hotel in down in the San Vitores area going a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. But the mere fact that a resort hotel is going Chapter 7 bankruptcy sends a message to investors. And the message is, this might not be a really good place to invest your money. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but this is not a really good indicator. Okay, next on the card, this is a little bit complicated. This is PNC versus the Daily News and the Post. And the Daily News, as where PNC came out in the first news story concerning Brown versus Respicio, or Respicio versus Brown, a battle of press releases between the two, where Rory says Brown took some retroactive pay raises and has got to pay them back. And Brown says poppycock. There's no truth to that whatsoever. So they take each other on in press releases, and true to their business plan, the Pacific News Center ran both of the press releases and nothing more. No commentary, no reporting, no nothing. They ran the two, but this time around, at least they said this is a press, we got this information from a press release. They didn't try to palm off a press release like they did with Neil Weir as though it were original work. So I'm putting it on the card as them versus the two outfits that actually attempted to do a little journalistic work. So, you know, we've got I can just look through some of the headlines here. The Daily News ran a story that says Brown says she could not authorize her own pay raises, calls action a witch hunt. Now, before I go any farther here, I want to tell you that the story is that both sides are saying, that Rory is saying Brown took retroactive salary increases. The Attorney General has said it's illegal. There's a statute that prohibits them, etc. Brown is saying, no, I didn't take any retroactive salary increases. Now, there's some interesting spin-offs off that, but before we go any farther, let's see if we could figure out what a retroactive salary increase is, because none of these stories tell you what a retroactive salary increase is. So I'm going to go back to my own GovGuam experience, okay? And in the government of Guam, when I was a teacher, there were a couple of different ways my salary would go up. One was called the salary increment, which until you get to a certain point, every year you get a salary increment, and you get it on your anniversary date. So if you went to work for the government of Guam, say on August 23rd of year one, when you got to August 23rd on year two, you'd be entitled to a salary increment, the amount of which is set out in statute. So come August 23 in year two, someone in the Department of Education bureaucracy would have to prepare a paper called a request for personnel action. And request for personnel action lists your name, rank, service number, blood type, shoe size, favorite color, the VIN number of the car you drive back, you know, all of this important information. Right?
Red, I mean orange.
Yeah, right. Whether you eat red rice or orange rice at a fiesta, all this important information. And it's usually generated by the director, but of course the director has a lot of paper shufflers, you know, that prepare these papers for him. So that request for personnel action then goes to the HR department in education or wherever, and based on that paper, a, quote, notification of personnel action is prepared. Now the request is old GG1. And then that phrase got so stuck in the language that people still use it, but they don't use it for the right thing. A notification of personnel action is not a GG1, but I got my GG1 today, so I'll be getting my raise. So the notification of personnel action is signature blocks for like 7 different government officials, including payroll. And it's a carbonized form, at least it was before. So when it's signed, it goes around, and all the other signatories sign it and take their own copy. And a photo, as you were a carbon copy or cross copy of the notification of personnel action, is the paper that actually causes the amount of an employee's check to increase. That's the pay document, right? Well, if your anniversary date is August 23, sometimes it would take until the end of September before all of these papers found their way through the bureaucracy and you actually saw an increase in your pay on your check. But it related back to August 23. Now, if you explain that to anybody and said, would this mean that there was a retroactive payment? The answer would be, yeah, there was a retroactive payment. Is that illegal? I sure hope not, because that's business as usual in the government of Guam. Okay, here is a really clear example of what a retroactive payment actually is. The Juan Pat 10, 32nd Guam legislature. At the beginning of the legislature, they provided several salary increases, including kicking the village mayors up to $75,000 a year. They gave a lot of raises in the executive branch, but they didn't give themselves raises. They thought, no, we shouldn't do that. After the votes were counted, like on about November 19th, And after all of the people that voted for those salary increases were through with the electoral process, they gave themselves a huge raise from $5,500 to $8,500. And the raise was effective back to the beginning of the 32nd Guam legislature. That is a retroactive raise. Now, Rory knows exactly what a retroactive raise is because he was a member of the WANPAT 10. So when this all came out at the end of the 32nd, of course, the votes had already been counted, but it was a hot issue in the 33rd, and seven of the WANPAT 10 lost their seats, including Rory. So if you're talking about a retroactive salary increase, that is a retroactive salary increase. When whoever it is has the authority to increase salary, increases the salary to a time prior to the date that the action to increase the salary was taken. That is a retroactive payment. Now, Rory and Frank Santos, made a lot of hay here out of retroactive salary increases, but I didn't see a single example in this whole thing. Now, I did see some pretty interesting reporting here. In this story, Brown says she could not authorize her own pay raises, etc. Brown came out and zeroed in on the resolution that kicked this whole thing off. I guess I ought to go there so we know exactly what it is that we're talking about. A resolution, the port, Rory, no doubt, published this draft resolution and got some press out of it before it ever went to the board of directors for the port. Let's take a short break and we'll come back to the Port Authority.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hapude, konnichiwa,
Patois, ciao. Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so a draft of the resolution was published. Then a week later, the resolution came before the board. Now, the only resolution I have is the draft that was sent out to the media, sent out to everybody, I guess. I haven't seen a signed copy of the resolution. It's not on the Port Authority's website. But the title is Relative to Directing the General Manager to Exercise Authority to take any and all administrative and or criminal actions necessary pursuant to OAG opinion dated November 9, 2021. We request for opinion on retroactive salary adjustments for former management at the Port Authority. And then the resolve clause, and there's several whereases. The resolve clause, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors hereby directs the PAG General Manager to exercise authority to take any and all administrative and or criminal actions necessary, etc. So on. Now, criminal actions are usually initiated by the Attorney General. The Attorney General ordinarily initiates a criminal procedure with an indictment by a grand jury. So when I saw this, I said, well, I guess we don't need a grand jury. We got a Port Authority Board of Directors here that will indict people, at least in the court of public opinion. And then there's a news release from Rory on the 29th of November, and responding to what Brown said. Now, what Brown said is this. This is really interesting because Brown said Rory's supposed to seek out misdemeanor prosecutions for two of his bosses because Nate Timonglow and Frank Santos, who are currently on the board and voted for this resolution, were on the board when Brown was the director of the port. So now Rory is supposed to do whatever he needs to do to get a misdemeanor prosecution against the chairman of his board and another board member. And Brown says, you know, you got counsel, two board members, Rory, all talking about this criminal prosecution. She alludes to, you know, the possibility of different interests. I don't think I need to go that much farther into that. But then Rory comes back with a press release, and he says, as for any future criminal prosecution, that authority rests with the Office of the Attorney General and the United States Attorney's Office, and not the Port Authority of Guam.
Or SHPO.
So why did they do this resolution? Now, I don't think that the chairman of the board sat down and wrote this out with a stubby pencil.
It's all in press releases.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, obviously the administration of the port prepared this resolution, and the resolution goes to the board, and if the board adopts it, which, of course, is the way things usually work, then Rory's supposed to do whatever. I guess he's supposed to go over to the Attorney General's office with a tin pan and sit out in front and bang it until the Attorney General comes out and says, and then he's supposed to say, prosecute Frank Santos, prosecute Nate Timonglow. No! But then he comes along and he says, oh, no, not me. That's the Attorney General's job. Then why put it in the resolution? Yeah. So this is where some real journalism would come in, because right now all we have are different press releases from Brown and I don't know which is the more credible. Brown has an interest in this, of course. If the raises were illegal and she has to pay the money back, obviously he's not going to want to do that. And then, you know, Rory, with respect to Rory, we go all the way back to Rory's first day as a general manager of the port. Not his first day, but his first meeting with the board. He comes before the board and he says, you know, I think we ought to try to settle the YTK case. And Oscar Calvo told him on the spot, you should resign. You don't have authority to start talking to Champ Calvo about resolving the YTK case. And Rory said, oh, all we did was just talk about where we would meet. The email trail tells a little different story. So Rory wanted to throw in the towel on the YTK case. Let's come up with a good settlement before the Supreme Court rules. Of course, we won that case. And then Rory also said, you know, I'm just not really happy with the way this whole Port 7 thing has gone. I'm appointing a task force to look into all of these matters to make sure that justice is done. His task force commander resigned like a month later. At about the same time, Rory said, we got to get rid of Mike Phillips. We need to have in-house counsel, because Phillips was all tied up in the Port 7 matter. So they hired Joe McDonald, who I think lasted 6 weeks, and he was gone, and the port didn't have any counsel at all for a long time. Then they brought, we spent a lot of time with this on Tall Tales, they brought in the Wolf. If you remember the movie Pulp Fiction, the Wolf was the fixer. In this case, it was Luis Maza, who was brought in to negotiate with the lawyers for the Port 6 that had cases that had not been resolved. Maza's not a lawyer. However, he did sit on the Civil Service Commission during the time some of the Port 6 cases came before the commission. Now, if this all sounds kind of hokey, you know, we haven't got enough press releases here to really figure out what went on. So in the end, the port cut checks to all of the Port 7. We have yet to see a complete report of how much was paid, how vigorously the port pursued mitigation of damages. But anyhow, Rory knows what a retroactive salary increase is. So then he's going after Brown, and the board wants him to seek criminal prosecution. However, I guess they got cold feet when they found out that the criminal prosecution might go so far as themselves. There's a story in the Daily News. The headline says, Brown says she could not authorize her own pay raises, calls action a witch hunt. And then in a statement released Monday, Brown cited a section of Guam law that specifies that any person who authorizes an illegal retroactive pay raise is guilty of a misdemeanor. She pointed to Port Chairman Francisco Santos and Vice Chairman Nathan Timinglow, who had served as her superiors. In other words, they were on the board. There should be scrutiny as to the raises of other general managers as well, she said. A response issued by current General Manager Rory Respicio Monday said, the senator continues to muddy the waters by throwing false statements, and the timing. And then he also said the Timinglow signature is not any of the retroactive pay documents. Well, if these are done by resolutions, only the chairman and the secretary's signature go on. So that may very well be true, but so what? And then in some real reporting here by the Daily News, we find this. A comparison of documents provided by the port to the Attorney General and the port memo issued on the payments appears to show Santos' signature on some of the pay adjustments. And then we have a Monday statement from Santos said that he had received board meeting minutes. He had reviewed board meeting minutes, and to my recollection, the board only approved her performance evaluation and never approved any retroactive salary pay raises. According to an audit from the Office of Public Accountability released earlier this year, only 2 of the 9 salary adjustments Brown received were ratified by the board. When asked whether the port would investigate how the illegal adjustments were approved, Respicio said, our focus is to recover the funds from Joanne Brown and others similarly situated, and that issues of illegality will be determined by the Attorney General. Interesting. Brown said the port had not contacted her about returning pay, besides the press releases that were issued. I have always paid money that I legitimately owed during my life, and I'm not going to change now, she said. So there you go. I mean, there's just enough here in these different press releases that you could reach all kinds of different kinds of conclusions. But I don't see anything in any of the papers that anybody put out that looks like a smoking gun. I'll tell you what I do see, however. Oh yeah, and there's one more interesting paper that came out in this whole conflagration. In today's Post, well, the Port Authority of Guam is now looking into retroactive pay increases for the former general manager and current legislator, Senator Joanne Brown. This is not the only pay issue looming over the port. The Office of Public Accountability, which found that the port did not consistently ratify pay adjustments for the former general manager and deputy general managers, is also looking into back wages provided to 9 current and former employees at the port. These include payments to the Port 7, those employees who were involved in a years-long workers' compensation controversy. The OPA may publish the next report in this series on back pay audits next month, but the first was published in February. It focused on a $114,000 overpayment, $114,000 overpayment to one employee who appeared to be Jose Guevara, based on a letter published by both OPA and the port. The OPA suggested multiple recommendations as a result of the audit, but the port disagreed with the findings and stated that based on its recalculations, Guevara was actually underpaid more than $4,700. However, the employee signed a document releasing the port from liability. Quote, clearly there is no OPA recommendation to implement because our contention is that there are some major philosophical. I wonder if they consulted with James Selman on this. Red and orange. Major philosophical and practical differences in the application of how the salaries were reconstructed, Rory said, regarding whether any of the OPA's recommendations had been followed. So none of them have been followed because they don't agree with them. So here we're dealing with a $114,000 overpayment to one employee, 6 more to go. So I'm not going to get into colors and pots and kettles or anything like that, but it's there. So, you know, press releases, etc. And I have something some personal experience here with this. I've got personal experience with both of them. We're both together in the 27th Guam legislature, Rory and Joanne. And I got to tell you, Rory's a cool guy. He really is. He and I sat in the back, and we probably had as much fun as anybody in that hall during the time we were senators together. Joanne Brown is probably as ferocious a legislative orator as we'll ever see. When she's on and she's going after something, she is hell on wheels. But anyhow, I have other history with Rory, and I am... Yeah, let's take a short break here and we'll come back to Rory.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Hey, Hey, let's go to Tango Theaters and watch a movie.
No way, I'm broke. How am I gonna buy snacks?
They have a combo special for the whole month of November called the G's for Giving Combo Specials. You can choose from 2 combos for just $13.75. G Combo 1 with a drink, popcorn, and candy, or G Combo 2 with a drink, hot dog, and chips.
Wow, okay, that sounds good.
A portion of the proceeds will be donated to the UOG Endowment Foundations for scholarships and programs.
Cool, it'll be my treat. I'll buy 2 combos.
Visit Tango Theaters and grab yourself a G Combo special during the whole month of November.
Yeah, so here's a little bit more Rory. A story ran in the Post, I think it was this year. Agency's mom on disciplinary actions after gambling fallout. Remember that, Jose? When this guy at, I think, the airport was running this online gambling deal.
Oh, yeah.
He got fired, and it apparently touched a couple of other agencies. So it says the AB Wampat International Airport Authority and Port Authority of Guam have instituted disciplinary actions following administrative reviews of allegations that police officers within the respective agencies were involved in prohibited gambling activities. Neither agency provided specific details. Port General Manager Rory Respicio simply confirmed that the agency completed its internal review and administrative action was taken. Now here's a quote, quotation marks. Because this is a personnel matter, we are prohibited from further comment on the matter. No! A long chain of emails, I pointed out the idiocy of this statement that there's nothing that prohibits anybody from saying anything about a personnel matter. If he didn't, it's because he didn't want to. But once again, because this is a personnel matter, we are prohibited from further comment on the matter. So what's different here in this particular case where, it's a war of press releases? Rory cranked out another one today. I'm on their mailing list. So the only way I could, one thing that lawyers try to do is they look at complicated rulings and then they try to figure out what a general rule is that you can extract from rulings that go in different directions. And I think the only rule that I could come up with on all this is that if it's a personnel matter, Rory can't talk about it, but there is one exception to the rule, and that is if he doesn't like the person. And then it's press releases galore. So, but
it went from personnel matter to a personal matter.
Yeah. So, but I'm not going to come down hard on either one of them. I'm going to come down hard on the media. They take a press release. If a director sent out a press release and said that we've had too many slip and falls at our agency, so I've enacted a personnel rule that repeals the law of gravity. They would just write it, Department of XY repeals law of gravity, and that would be it. They'd run the story, and that would be it. So, as long as we have this kind of reporting, journalism, this is kind of stuff we're going to get. And you can't blame Rory. I mean, if they're going to run his press releases as though they're news, you can't blame Neil Weir. Everybody's looking for earned media. And if the earned media is really good, easy to get, that's the way the game is played. All right, so we'll keep our eye out for the next round of press releases here. Next on the card is renewable energy and Clint versus reality. And this ran in an outfit called Town Hall, one of the emails that I get every day. It's by a guy named Frank Vernuccio. American families will face devastating increases in energy prices in the coming months. It's a wholly unnecessary crisis created by the Biden administration and the progressive extremists who control it. Accepting the most radical approaches to environmental concerns, Biden moves swiftly to curtail U.S. energy production, the transportation of natural gas. Almost immediately upon taking office, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. I think it was the first day, the very first day. The left loved it. The environmental wackos were dancing in the streets. He canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, halted new oil and gas leases on federal property, stopped drilling in ANWR, which is up in Alaska, and targeted federal subsidies for oil and gas production. Before Biden attacked U.S. energy production, Americans were enjoying the financial benefits of the energy independence the Trump administration had achieved. Yeah, but we don't like Trump. That's true, but he's got bad manners, and he's just not a good person.
He's definitely orange.
Yeah, he's got orange hair. He tries to pass himself off as a redhead, but Paul Zerzan ain't buying it.
He got it right.
Yeah. Household energy expenditures had dropped dramatically. Now oil prices have hit a 7-year high. Biden also rejoined the Paris Climate Accord, which does more to transfer wealth from industrialized nations to third world nations, which, of course, is the name of the game. That's what it's all about. That's what the whole climate change thing is about, to transfer wealth from the rich ones to the other nations. As the Financial Post has noted, Paris is a climate fairy tale. Can you say that anymore? Will I get canceled for using the word?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's all right. It's not I didn't put it in here. It's in the article. It has always been more about money and politics than the environment. Biden's climate mistakes have been a major gift to Vladimir Putin. Russia's main source of international income and power is from the sale of energy. While destroying Keystone, Biden made it easier for Putin's similar pipeline to be developed. Major sales of U.S. energy to Europe, which could have aided the American economy, have been replaced by Moscow, which uses its energy sales as a bludgeon to influence the continent. Yeah, you play ball with us or we'll cut off your oil. America's NATO allies are suffering as a result of Biden's inexplicable eviscerating of U.S. energy while encouraging Russia. Moscow has already begun squeezing supplies of energy. Europe was already suffering high prices since they adopted policies similar to those Biden is now imposing on the U.S. House Republican Whip Steve Scalise and House Energy Action Team co-chairs Representative Jeff Duncan and Representative Mark Wayne Mullen have protested the White House policy. In a statement recently released, they noted, since taking office, President Biden's anti-American energy agenda has been on full display as he killed the Keystone pipeline and halted domestic oil and gas exploration while begging OPEC and Russia to increase production of foreign oil, and is now trying to ram through billions in new job-crushing energy taxes and regulations that will increase costs and inflation even higher on low-income families. Meanwhile, gas prices in America have skyrocketed to a 7-year high, and household energy costs continue to increase for hardworking families. This administration has ignored the fact that these anti-American energy policies mean that we and our allies abroad will have to get our energy from countries with much worse emission standards like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China. Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to this item on the card after our big halftime show. Let's enjoy.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Caution ahead of the new COVID strain. I'm Sal Chiangrasso, Fox News. The World Health Organization warns that the global risk from the Omicron variant is very high, based on the early evidence, saying the mutated coronavirus could lead to surges with severe consequences. And the president spoke about the variant Monday.
When President Biden first became president almost 1 year ago, he said we would be going through a dark winter. Different words in the Roosevelt room. He said that we can do this as a country. He also told the American people that he would not be mandating lockdowns or shutdowns. For officials, the most concern right now, the transmissibility of this particular strain, Omicron. And according to early data, Omicron seems to be contagious. The travel ban announced by the president kicked in. And to be clear, it does not apply to American citizens in South Africa who want to come home.
Fox's David Spaulding at the White House. Prosecutors urged the U.S. Supreme Court to reinstate Bill Cosby's sexual assault conviction, complaining in a petition released Monday that the verdict was thrown out over a questionable agreement that the comic claimed gave him lifetime immunity. A jury has been seated in the Chicago trial of actor Jussie Smollett.
A jury has been chosen in the trial of Jussie Smollett as the former Empire actor contends he was the victim of a racist and homophobic assault in downtown Chicago on a frigid night in January 2019. However, two brothers who worked with him on the show claim that he paid them $3,500 to pose as his attackers. Judge James Lind said cameras are not allowed inside the courtroom and the proceedings are not being live streamed. Smollett is accused of lying to the police about the attack and has been charged with felony disorderly conduct, which carries a prison sentence of up to 3 years, although many believe he will receive probation and community service. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
America's listening to Fox News.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only support programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
The Pacific Northwest grapples with too much rain.
That's the sound of a flood siren as people in Sumas, Washington were told to shelter in place Monday. Several creeks and rivers either flow through or near this town. Monday, they overflowed their banks and crept onto the streets. This came after another atmospheric river event hit the Pacific Northwest this weekend, bringing between 3 to 6 inches of rain to portions of Washington's Olympic Peninsula and the northern interior. After a break Monday, an additional 1 to 1.5 inches of rain are predicted through Tuesday night in the lowlands of Washington's Whatcom and Skagit counties, with 2 to 4 inches of rain expected for the North Cascades and portions of the Olympic Peninsula. While there won't be as much rain coming with this next system, the concern is that rivers and creeks are already filled with water and the ground is already saturated. In Sumas, Washington, Max Gordon, Fox Weather.
Attorneys are set to begin sifting through potential jurors for the manslaughter trial of suburban Minneapolis police officer Kim Potter, who says she meant to use her taser instead of her gun when she killed Dante Wright, a black motorist. A phone conversation between two feuding congresswomen Lauren Boebert and Ilhan Omar fails to patch things up.
There was a call between the congresswomen. It lasted about 2 minutes. It did not go well.
I will continue to fearlessly put America first, never sympathizing with terrorists. Unfortunately, Ilhan can't say the same thing.
Lauren Boebert said she wanted a meeting, but Ilhan Omar made it clear that would not happen. Both parties tell Fox there were no raised voices on the call. Boebert tells Fox Omar hung up on her. Omar's office says it was clear the call wasn't going anywhere. Boebert said she wants Omar to apologize for anti-Semitic and anti-police rhetoric.
That's Fox's Chad Pergram. Asian markets mostly higher after Wall Street rebounded a bit from last week's steep slide. I'm Sanji Ingrasso. This is Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
So here we are back again at Tall Tales, and I'm still working on this item on the card called Renewable Energy and Clint versus Reality. And the beginning of this article that I reading from Town Hall talks about how Biden canceled the XL pipeline and, really limited our own supply of oil while encouraging the Russians to build theirs. Going on with the article, the path Biden is following has already failed in Europe, where natural gas prices are about 6 times as expensive as they were just a year ago. Euronews reported that Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki recently said the energy price crisis was to blame on the EU climate policy. Hiked energy prices resulted in higher prices for everything else. U.S. inflation has hit 5.4%, the highest rate since 2008. It may go higher as energy prices continue to soar. The concept of engaging in clean energy is not terrible, but realism must be factored in. A Heartland Institute study notes that the financial cost of building the 100% renewable energy world are enormous, but the land area needed to accommodate such diffuse sources of energy supply is just as daunting. Accommodating the 46,480 solar PV plants envisioned for the U.S. would take 650,720 square miles, almost 20% of the lower 48 states. Are you listening, Clint? Clint wants to shut down the power plants and go solar tomorrow. The existing supply of metals needed for clean energy technologies is nowhere near sufficient, not in America nor across the world. Yeah, but that's all right because it's environmentally friendly. Nor are the technologies used for clean energy without significant drawbacks. Solar energy destroys vast amounts of natural habitat. Windmills destroy wildlife and use huge amounts of non-recyclable materials. So Clint and Sabina are the leading environmental wackos here. And I suspect they think Joe Biden is doing exactly what he should do, canceling the XL pipeline, shutting down, limiting our ability to produce oil, because if we can't produce oil, then we'll have to go into solar energy. We'll have no choice. Now, millions of people may die in the process because you don't turn on solar energy overnight. Okay, let me see here what else I've got here. My paper's kind of out of order. Yeah, next on the card is CNN versus Waukesha. Now, Waukesha is a city in Wisconsin, about 70,000 people. I suspect it's probably 20 or 25 miles downtown Waukesha to downtown Milwaukee. And it's all urban in between. US 18, I-94, yeah, it's all urban in between. So Waukesha is sort of like a suburb of Milwaukee.
It has like a big small town feel to it.
Yeah.
I've been through there many times.
Yeah. The most outstanding feature of Waukesha is the downtown, and is built around what Waukeshans referred to as the 5 points. 5 streets intersect. So, and we all know that last week, a man in a SUV drove his SUV down a Christmas parade and killed 5 people and injured like 20 more. Now, the article I have here comes from PJ Media. It's by A.J. Kaufman, and the title is CNN Continues to Mislead About Waukesha. A week has passed since the horrific mass murder in Wisconsin, and CNN is still being dishonest. Now the left-wing network is being trashed on social media for blaming a vehicle for the Waukesha Christmas parade massacre instead of the repeat felon who planned the deadly assault. On Sunday, CNN duplicitously insinuated that a car was the cause of 6 deaths and 62 people being injured, 62 people injured, including 18 children. They crafted a misleading tweet that read, quote, Waukesha will hold a moment of silence today, marking 1 week since a car drove through a city Christmas parade, killing 6 people and injuring scores of others. A car. And when we talked about this yesterday, I wanted to blame Elon Musk, because he's the guy with all these self-driving cars. It must have been one of his cars for which no human would take any responsibility. In the original article, CNN writers did not mention Darrell Brooks, the suspect charged with 5, soon to be 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, until the final paragraph. And of course, you absolutely cannot mention that Darrell Brooks is an African American who has posted all kinds of black supremacy stuff on the internet.
What's interesting enough was Scrub just like less than a day after everyone found out what his name was, less than hours after they found his name.
It's all gone, yeah. Sentient Twitter commentators obliterated CNN for their continued pre-verifications about the massacre during the suburb's annual parade. And here are some examples. Oh, snap. The car drove itself. Question, has the car been arrested yet? You all know CNN is a political hack, but seriously, a car drove through a parade? Obviously, it's someone who's scared to call the murder of 6 what it really is, an act of domestic terrorism. And then the tweet, please hire actual journalists, CNN. I don't think an actual journalist would last long at CNN. A car plowed through the farmer's market. A car plowed through the Christmas parade. What's old is new again, uncovering mass ramming attacks. Who operates a car? A driver. Obfuscating this fact is criminal. Huge disservice by the media with a shoddy reporting. It was intentional, brutal mass murder of children and the elderly during a Christmas parade, and the only plausible motive for the suspect based on his online postings is anti-white bigotry in the aftermath of the Rittenhouse verdict. So Rittenhouse shot and killed 2 white guys, wounded a third, was found not guilty of killing anybody, and because of that, the Black Lives Matter got their skivvies all bunched up. This is clear racism, what Rittenhouse did. CNN headline is, let's see, thankfully, after being trashed, the failing outlet walked back its deceptive headline, changing it to Waukesha will hold a moment of silence Sunday, 1 week after a man plowed a vehicle through a Christmas parade.
Amen.
Even that is sexist, right? CNN isn't the first corporate media entity to run a false narrative blaming a vehicle for the malicious attack, despite knowing that the ex-convict and black nationalist Darrell Brooks is criminally charged for the deaths. On Thanksgiving, the Washington Post ran a clever headline, quote, here's what we know so far on the sequence of the events that led to the Waukesha tragedy caused by an SUV. Wow. You know, it's getting harder and harder for Saturday Night Live to be funny.
Well, everything's written for them.
Yeah, really. There's so much competition. The democracy dies in darkness crowd, that's the Post, didn't tell the entire story to their insular readers, so they changed the headline to what we know so far in the sequence of events that led to the Waukesha tragedy. That's still weak journalism. It's a massacre, not a tragedy. And of course, the newspaper still forgot to mention Brooks, the suspect who repeatedly called for violence against white people before purposely running over dozens of innocent Americans, all of whom were white, by the way. The satirical Babylon Bee is is really hard for Babylon Bee nowadays, too, because people can't tell the difference between serious news from the mainstream cartel and Babylon Bee.
Not even the fact checkers.
Really. Babylon Bee has properly mocked legacy media for blaming the heinous massacre on a car, including a Sunday piece with the headline, Waukesha SUV charged with 6 counts of murder. Yeah. So I have another article here by Derek Hunter called The Left versus the Truth. And you and I have talked about this before, Jose, that it's if what actually happened doesn't fit the narrative, The media cannot report what actually happened. They've got to bend it around to make it fit the narrative. And this is Derek Hunter. He says, there's nothing worse than a progressive. That sounds like something I'd say. That is, no qualifiers necessary. That not only sums it up, it's the whole thing. How else can you explain their actions without suffering a closed head injury? Being bad people is the only way to explain how the left acts. Where to start with something like this? The choices are too plentiful. Could it be the Black Lives Matter leadership tweeting, "You're eating dry turkey and overstuffing and overcooked stuffing on stolen land"? Now this is the latest thing that the left requires. If you're anywhere in North America and you're in any kind of a gathering, you're supposed to acknowledge that you are occupying stolen land because the land was stolen from Native Americans 300 years ago.
No, see, not to get too much into that, but how deep does that history have to go? Because I'm sure that those Native Americans at one point, quote unquote, stole it from another tribe that they were warring with, because that's what humanity does. That's the history of the world.
And you read up something like the Apache were the best stealers of all. They were the very toughest of the Native Americans. Yeah, and I read a short history on that, and it was just, that was life in pre-European North America. One tribe would raid another for squaws.
And that's not to be dismissive. That's just to put everything in perspective.
Right.
None of that land has been stolen, I would say, in the past 200 years, 100 years.
Yeah, if it ever was stolen, you know. And of course, you read about treaties between the United States and various Indians. Some of those treaties are still being honored. And this is the whole extraterritorial status for Native Americans. If you are a Native American who is a member of a tribe living on a tribal reservation, you are a subordinate sovereign. You have sovereignty, something like a state, but not quite as dramatic. And this is all a product of a couple of things, one of which is treaties between the United States and various Native American tribes. And another one is something that I mentioned from time to time, Article 1, Section 3, as you were Section 8, which deals with the powers of Congress. The Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, etc., to borrow money on the credit of the United States, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states, and with the Indian tribes. Yeah.
But see, you cite citations of information that could be quantified and qualified. We have to contend with the left emotional arguments.
Stolen land.
You can't grasp anything from that. You can't even talk about it because it all depends on what you define as stolen and how far back you're going to go. It's very abstract.
And then there's the Kafka trap. The Kafka, you know, and Kafka's, some of Kafka's now writing about the bureaucracy. If you are accused of being a criminal and you deny it, that's proof that you are.
Well, they try to do that in the Rittenhouse case.
Uh-huh.
You were silent, and now you're not. That means the judge had to stop him.
So if someone says, "Hey, Bob, you're a racist," and I say, "No, really, I'm not a racist," that is proof positive that I am because I denied it.
Automatically.
Yeah. So going on with this article here, is it any wonder these race grifters appear so angry all the time? They have millions of dollars, live like royalty while whining about oppression, own more properties than Donald Trump, yet eat garbage food. I'd be angry too, but I'd fix the problem, unlike these morons. As for the stolen land claim, honestly, who cares? Show me a title to the land, then we can talk. Otherwise, it's time for people to stop whining about things that happened before anyone they ever met were born. The simple fact of the matter is, any way you choose to divide human beings has a history of oppression. No race of people is purely a victim or a perp. There were white slaves and black slave owners. Slavery was not invented by evil whitey. It was created in Africa. The Africans sold into slavery and shipped to the New World were not hunted down by Europeans. They were captured and sold by other Africans, just of different tribes. Pretty much all of the ideas on which the left functions are a lie, none more than their lies about race and victimhood. That brings us to the disappearing story of Darrell Brooks. He murdered half dozen Americans because he didn't like their skin color. An ardent supporter of the hypocrites and frauds of Black Lives Matter, Brooks apparently had a history of social media posts filled with racism and threats based on skin color. In other words, he was a typical Democrat in good standing. Yeah. Okay, I've got somebody waiting to get out of the green room here. Dr. Ron McNish. Afternoon, Ron.
Hey, Happy Day Thunder, Happy Day Guam. Yeah, I've been watching with a lot of curiosity this case. Apparently, this guy had a long history of trying to run people down or injure or shoot at people. I mean, I think it was incredible. It was like almost 9 minutes of a recitation of his criminal background. And apparently, just a couple of days before he ran down these people in the parade, he apparently ran down his the mother of his child also. Just incredible. You know, I don't know. I think that the media not adequately reporting this is a key symptom. We have freedom of the press in the United States, and unfortunately, it's as if there's no freedom of the press anymore. It's simply people say only little, snippets of a narrative that they agree with. There's no longer, even a basic recitation of basic facts on these things, even though they're obvious. So, I don't know.
Well, it's like we were talking about at the beginning of the story here. There's a narrative, and the narrative is dedicated towards reaching a certain result. And anything that appears to be news that doesn't fit the narrative is either made to fit the narrative or ignored, like the Waukesha matter. And the result, the net result of the narrative is a neo-Marxist paradise here in the United States. It all goes back to the Frankfurt School back in the 1920s. Critical race theory, the whole thing. And it's so obvious if you stand back and take a look at it and you piece together all of these things and how the narrative always tries to reach the same result. It's kind of like one of the things that Rules for Radicals, what was his name?
Alinsky?
Yeah, no, Saul Alinsky said, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution.
Not to beat a dead horse or to overwash rice, but think about the whole red versus orange debacle, where someone simply states an opinion like that, and it turns into this whole message of cultural appropriation and this huge rhetoric we got from Selman. That had nothing to do with red rice.
One of your brother professors said it was culturally insensitive to say that red rice is actually orange.
Well, we can choose our friends. We can't choose our families. I have to tell you, I have a life, and I worry about things far more important than those kinds of discussions. And people try to drag me into them all the time in this place.
You mean you're not concerned about the actual color of the rice we eat at Fiestas, Ron?
I'm far more concerned on how we can get our children educated, how we can help them have better math skills, how we can help them to read better, how we can make sure that they're clothed and fed and kept safe. Those are the kinds of issues I would prefer to
You
spend my
think
time.
that's more important than the color of rice that we eat at a fiesta? Wow.
Well, it's more important for me. And I can't control the views of a lot of other people, but I get to regulate the space around me, and I get to pick and choose the kinds of things I decide to waste my time on. And I think that there's a lot of people who really, they have so much time on their hands, they don't really think about the reality. And the reality is we can make a difference if we try. We can help young people if we try. We can actually by ourselves make a very powerful force for change in this world, because we live in a country, and we still live in a country that allows us the freedoms and the dignity to do so. And I think that when people threaten it, in some of the things you've mentioned through the media or other things, that does everyone a disservice. And I think that having a voice and finding our voice and speaking out against the tyrannical interests of these crazy media people is very important.
Well, I agree with you 100% on that, and that's a large part of the day here on Tall Tales, speaking out against this crazy media. Or in the case of our Guam media, crazy border or non-performing, sometimes bordering on crazy, but mostly non-performing.
Well, they read and recite press releases verbatim too much, and they don't do a lot of original fact, discovery. And I think that it's unfortunate, because there are so many neat stories that could be reported here.
Yeah, I agree, Ryan. Well, what floor in the ivory tower are you on? Are you near the top out there, or are you so high up that you get altitude sickness when you go to work? Or
no, I'm on the bottom floor of this building, and I'm stuck in a little bitty office that has no real windows because it's covered up for typhoon work. But I think that in general, I remember when we didn't have a very good building here, and our community worked to make a better building. I think that there's something to that. We can always try to make the world around us a better place, but we have to work for it. It doesn't drop out of the sky for us.
You remember back in the days of Building A and Building B?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Huge chunks of concrete falling, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Hotter than the hinges of hell, even during night classes.
Right.
Okay, Ron, well, thanks for calling. And once again, I teased you a little bit, but I agree with you 100% as usual.
No, I always love your show, sir, and I don't always agree with you 100%. I agree with you probably 95% of the time, but that's great.
Well, I take it as a matter of pride that I always defend people's right to be wrong, even after they've listened to me explain what the right answers are. See you later, Ron.
Yep.
Okay, time for the 7th inning stretch. Let's go to Chicago.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app, AUDACY.
portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I've got a poster here on Facebook. James Arndt said, I'm from the Hegewisch neighborhood in Chicago. Do you know where that is? And I don't. I wonder how far it is from Wrigley Field.
Well, at least you don't have to cross state lines to get there from Wrigley.
Oh, yeah, crossing that Illinois state line, man, that's something a person should never do. And I have to confess, I did it when I was back in the States here last month. Yeah, when I drove from Pittsburgh to Wisconsin.
How dare you?
I had to cross the Illinois state line to get into Wisconsin. Yeah. But I didn't have an AR-15 with me, so I guess that was my saving grace. Okay, next item on the card here is guilty verdict versus League of Women Voters. And this is more of the same old thing about the narrative of the left. Now, we had 2 murder trials that occurred very close to each other in time. We had the Rittenhouse trial in Kenosha, where Rittenhouse killed 2 white guys and wounded a third. At a riot in Kenosha, Rittenhouse alleged that he was there to help his friends protect their property. But of course, the left would have none of it because it was a Black Lives Matter peaceful demonstration. And since he was not supporting Black Lives, he was a bad dude. And since he was bad, only a guilty verdict would have been appropriate because, as Jose and I were talking, he crossed state lines with an AR-15. Of course, he didn't. He didn't do any of that stuff. The left just tried to, as hard as they could, to discredit him. And the other case was 3 white guys killed a guy named Arbery in Glencoe, Georgia. And they were prosecuted for first-degree murder, and the jury brought in a guilty verdict. And from everything that I read in the newspaper, it was the right verdict. So one would think there would be a certain amount of satisfaction in that. So here's an article that ran in a website called law.com. And here is the takeaway from it. In this case, despite overwhelming racial prejudice, justice was still served. Overwhelming racial prejudice. Yet this was the exception to the rule, the League of Women Voters said in a written statement. Now, I'll go into this a little bit farther. Civil rights lawyers and activists heralded the guilty verdicts Wednesday for the killing of Ahmaud Arbery as a hopeful sign of changing times in the South. But some said a just result belied significant problems with how the trial was conducted. The events surrounding the killing of Ahmaud Arbery harken back to the worst practices of Georgia under Jim Crow, the ACLU of Georgia said in a written statement. So they got their guilty verdict. But still,
the narrative.
Yeah, that didn't fit the narrative. They were hoping that the jury would bring in a not guilty so they could fit it into their narrative. it wasn't not guilty, so now they've got to really shoehorn what actually happened into their narrative. The question before the jury was whether they believed in a Georgia that is multiracial and multicultural, where every person can live freely, or whether they would affirm white supremacy. That goes back to the article that we talked about the other day. Justice in a criminal trial is individual. It's not a place to settle society's ills, to bring about broad behaviors and changes, etc. It's about the people on trial and the crime that they committed. But leave it to the ACLU. The ACLU, the question before the jury was whether they believed in a Georgia that is multiracial and multicultural, where every person can live freely, or whether they would affirm white supremacy. I wonder if any of the ACLU lawyers, when they took criminal law in law school, worked that into their law school answers. If they did, they wouldn't be lawyers now. The case has captured national attention since the release of a video on social media in May 2020 showing 3 white men chasing down and killing a young black man trying to run away. At that point, nearly 3 months had gone by without any charges filed. With their verdict, the jury rejected the vestige of Jim Crow and the assertion of white supremacy that was at the center of this case. This is a vitally important step brought about because of the determination of Ahmaud Arbery's family and his community in public protests, said Andrea Young, executive director of the ACLU of Georgia. Importantly, the movement led to the repeal of the citizen's arrest law, and we must continue to work for racial equality in the state of Georgia. Glenn County must create an independent citizens review board. Black Georgians must have a choice in our state and local governments that fully reflects their share of the population, and we must protect the right to protest, without which these men would never have even been arrested. Well, she makes a few good points, but it kind of gets drawn out once again in the narrative. Repealing the citizen's arrest law, if you follow this case, that was a good deal, because the citizen's arrest law was a bad law. Arbery, 25, was killed February 23, 2020 in the Satia Shores neighborhood near his home outside Brunswick, a place his family said he frequently included on his running route. No arrests were made until May 7 after the release on social media of a video showing the shooting. Clearly visible was a young man running for his life as 3 white men in 2 trucks chased him down and trapped him. One, Travis McMichael, confronted him on the street with a shotgun. Another, Gregory McMichael, stood in the back of the first truck pointing a handgun. The third, William Bryan, who made the video, was in the second truck. After seeing the video, Governor Brian Kemp and Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr directed Georgia Bureau of Investigation Director Vic Reynolds to offer the Bureau's assistance to a local DA, the third one assigned to the case. Within 2 days, the state taking over the investigation, the McMichaels were arrested. The Attorney General reassigned the case to then Cobb County District Attorney Joyette Holmes. Brian's arrest followed May 22. The 3 defendants have been held in custody since then. Permanent civil rights and personal injury attorney Ben Crump represents Arbery's father and other families of the black men killed by white police officers or those acting as police officers. Ben Crump never saw an ambulance he couldn't chase. Guilty, guilty, guilty. After nearly 2 years of pain, suffering, and wondering if Ahmaud's killers would be held to account, the Arbery family finally has some justice. Nothing will bring back Ahmaud, but his family will have some peace knowing the men who killed him will remain behind bars and can never inflict their brand of evil on another innocent soul. Other reactions displayed a mix of relief and concern. Here's the League of Women's Voters. This is why I'm using this article. Today, justice was served. While the verdict cannot bring back Ahmaud Arbery, The truth prevailed, the League of Women Voters said in a written statement. Nevertheless, the case exemplified the need for reform in our judicial system, which in many places through the country continues to allow countless racially motivated murders to go unpunished as a result of white supremacy. You got to work, even with a guilty verdict, you got to get the key words in there, white supremacy. Fortunately, today, the jury made the correct decision in what has been called a modern-day lynching. But the League also listed concerns raised by the case. As an organization focused on uplifting of all American voices, we're struck by the numerous ways in which black voices were silenced throughout this case. They include the court denying black constituents who make up more than a quarter of the population where Mr. Arbery was murdered fair representation in the jury. Now, that can't possibly be. The court denied, you're black, no, you can't sit on this jury. I don't think that happened. Despite the prosecutor's protests, 11 of the 12 jurors in Mr. Arbery's case were white. The prosecutor's protest? Okay, the defendant's legal team, so 11 white jurors still brought in a guilty verdict, but we got a bitch about it. The defendant's legal team explicitly attempting to bar, quote, black pastors from the courtroom, with one lawyer claiming that their presence alone was racial intimidation against white jurors. Well, the counsel was trying to do its job, and the judge really raised hell with him for that particular move, by the way. The defense filing for a mistrial, arguing that Mr. Arbery's mother's sobs in court were unfairly influencing the jury, despite Travis McMichael also crying on the stand. Their request was denied. Well, you know, in a criminal trial, defense counsel is trying to do everything that they can to get their client off. This is not an example of a societal problem. A court that silences its constituents cannot be just. A system built on racism cannot curb racial violence. In this case, despite overwhelming racial prejudice, 11 white jurors brought in a guilty verdict. Justice was still served. Yet this was an exception to the rule, the League said. We cannot and will not rest on this verdict. We want a guilty verdict. Immediate action must be taken to reform our criminal justice system. The health of the nation depends on it. It's just amazing how the left, you know, it has no shame, can throw these things out in a situation like this. All right, let's see if I've got one of the McMichael defenders here and waiting in the green room to get on the air. It's Senator Chris Duenas. I'll tell you what, let's go to Churchill Downs, and then we'll find Chris Duenas at Churchill Downs.
Hafude, konnichiwa,
patois, ciao. Enter for a chance to win the 76 Circle K World Cuisine Giveaway. Be one of 3 lucky winners to win a passport of free food from around the world at over 15 different local restaurants. Just stop by any 76 Circle K, purchase $35 or more in fuel to get an entry form. Drive by today and taste the world with 76 Circle K's World Cuisine Giveaway. Visit 76circlekguam.com for more details. Some conditions apply. Circle K, take it easy.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, here we are, Churchill Downs, the home stretch of Tall Tales, and we've got a new jockey in the race here. It's none other than Senator Chris Duenas, riding that big horse out of the starting gate. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, Senator, Honorable Marine, Your Honor, and my favorite talk show host. I've been a little bit of a regular because I just love what you've been talking about, Your Honor. And, Darrell Brooks, say his name, say his name, say his name. That is exactly what the far left loonies do when they go out and protest in the streets and create upheaval and the like when it fits their narratives. But there's a complete blackout from that might get us kicked off of Facebook, of the mainstream media on this issue. And may God bless the people of Waukesha and bring them comfort in the loss of several beautiful lives. I believe it's up to 6, and also heal those families. But I called because I remember my last call to you on this very issue, in asking you directly, do these individuals and do people who are supposed to be responsible for proper journalism, which you've basically explained that doesn't exist anymore on all of these mainstream media, super loony lefty outlets. But I called because, the greatest call after my call that and now I can see, particularly with this issue, what our Carl was talking about is this is exactly the program. This is the program of the far left loonies. This is the program of the Marxist regime. This is the program of everything that has been being done now for decades to lay the groundwork for this situation. And he alerted me to some interesting reading that I need to, step up on and get more educated. But I really was, our Carl, basically his statement after saying, Chris needs to understand that this is exactly the playbook. This is exactly what's going on. It is absolutely the belief and the movement, and this is why Paul tells, God bless Fox News, that really kind of the last upright organization, in my opinion, that is really just keeping the balance of our nation in terms of the free press. You may know a couple of different outlets, but I don't know what we would do without it. And this is the value of Tall Tales. And our Carl really he's always made a great impression on me, but he really, really, kind of talked me off of my position on, do these people really believe this? This is exactly the script.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, Chris, but I do sometimes think that we're the last bastion here of sanity. Even on our island, there's so many people that have drunk this poison Kool-Aid or just don't really much care about what's going on. That I think it's really good that we're here keeping the Go ahead.
Absolutely, and that's why I know that Frenchy and others, they really have a lot of really, really strong positions to go out and fight the fight, and I've tried my best. I know, and that's why when I was on your show before, and you're looking at a lot of the things we talked about 2 weeks ago, Bob, in terms of the movement. We talked yesterday about the Congress people that completely ignored China's a demand that they not go to Taiwan and elevate those relations. There are stories that are coming out now of the United States bolstering Australia, Guam, and other regional partners on the Indo-Pacific. I mean, everything we got in the briefing 3 weeks ago is really being elevated and bearing out that this is the key issues, within our region now. And you're right. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, particularly the anti-military sentiment that will, bubble up from time to time in the legislature. I fight ardently against that. I hope to get 8 votes when I can, but the reality is that there's a lack of reality sometimes in understanding, the value of our relationship, and yes, we can negotiate, things that we need for Guam outside of the billions of dollars that are rolling in right now, and the governor constantly touting now tax credits for affordable homes. I mean, these things are all coming from the largesse and being part of the American family. Now, certainly, there's always things to be done, and then in any government, that's the way to go. But you're right, Bob. I mean, that is the fight. Other than the critical race theory and all the craziness, the fight really does come down to when voices are anti-militarization and believe that we are simply a pawn as opposed to a place that's positioned to defend the world and defend ourselves. I will always stand up for that. So you're right. I mean, we have to fight against the notion that some of the far left positions are positions to be taken when it really can become a detriment to our people. And even when Ron was talking about the education of our children, opportunities of our children, I mean, the large percentage of that comes from federal dollars that allow our kids, an opportunity to learn and have a better life. So, we got to keep the fight up, and Tall Tales is absolutely at the forefront. But our Carl really did kind of, reposition my brain to say, this is absolutely the narrative, and you cannot. I mean, it's just you have to really work hard on the national level for all of those mainstream outlets to basically completely ignore a car, an SUV, a vehicle did not cause this carnage. Darrell Brooks caused this carnage, and he has a history, and he was there to do damage, and that's a fact.
Well, you mentioned our Carl in some rather complimentary terms. I guess, Chris, now you know why we refer to him as the most dangerous man in the room.
Absolutely. He does his research. He sent me so many links. I've got some homework to do over the next couple of days. But I mean, he does not come on Tall Tales or without having done his research. And I got to meet him personally a couple of weeks ago, and I'm glad I did because he's a really sharp guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, he said that sometimes when people run into him and they find out that he is Carl Borja Nelson, they're a little disappointed. They were expecting something more along the lines of a young Sean Connery.
Well, I know that you know him, and he's very personable and a really nice guy. And if I have to use the Bob Klitzkie term, a nice guy to shake and howdy with.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I've known Carl since he was about 16 years old. So if he exhibits admiral qualities, now you know the reason why.
and that's the end of the story.
There you go.
Thanks, Bob. I've enjoyed myself, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for calling, Chris. Always a pleasure. Yeah. Chris Duenas, Senator Chris Duenas. Another who has been influenced by the most dangerous man in the room, Carl Nelson. Okay, I got just a few minutes to go here. I've got an article here that I'm not going to read the entire thing. I'll just maybe read some of the punchline. And this is something that ran in the Federalist, one of the newsletters that I get every day. And it's by a lady named Evita Duffy. And the headline is, Carl Rittenhouse and every able-bodied man had a moral obligation to protect Kenosha. Any able-bodied man over 16 had a moral obligation to defend Kenosha against vandals, looters, and arsonists attacking while police stood down. I got to agree with it. You know, we hear the word vigilante tossed around all the time. And if you were to research the history of the word vigilante, there were vigilantes in the American West, in the frontier, in those areas where there wasn't civil law enforcement. And the people organized into vigilantes in order to protect themselves and to protect their property. So maybe I'll pick this up tomorrow. It's a pretty interesting article. Okay, that's it for today. Another episode of Tall Tales. I got to say, let's go, Brandon, and end the show. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president says,
this variant is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic.
I'm Sal Giangrasso, Fox News. President Biden addressed the nation about the Omicron variant of COVID-19 yesterday.
The president, following a meeting with his COVID task force, urging Americans to take in stride news of the Omicron variant of COVID-19, all but assuring concerned consumers, business owners, and in particular, worried parents that now's not the time to return to lockdowns, rather to get vaccinated, boosted, and where possible, to wear masks. The comments come as the U.S. has blocked entry for most visitors from 8 southern African nations, a decision that sparked an outcry among African leaders, many of whom insist there's simply no evidence that such measures are necessary.
That's Fox's Kevin Cork. Meantime, the CDC has shifted its guidance on COVID-19 booster shots over concerns about the Omicron variant.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention strengthened its recommendation for COVID vaccine boosters. They had been saying anyone over 18 may get a shot. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said Monday all adults should get a booster because, quote, the recent emergence of the Omicron variant further emphasizes the importance of vaccination, boosters, and prevention efforts needed to protect against COVID-19. Still, researchers at Johns Hopkins University say it's not clear yet how transmissible the variant may be. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports the FDA could approve Pfizer's COVID-19 booster shot for use in 16 and 17-year-olds as early as next week. In Washington, Sean Lanchel, Fox News.
29-year-old Jermarcus David, the California father suspected of killing his 4 children and his mother-in-law, is facing his first court appearance today. The children were all under the age of 12, and one was an infant. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News. From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Jessica Tarlov.
I'm Chris Wallace, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Iran and Western nations return to the negotiating table to try to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal.
Iran's nuclear delegation arrives in Vienna for talks this week. These officials will speak indirectly with the Americans about sanctions relief in exchange for Iran returning to the confines of an agreement.
It is obvious that in this round of negotiations, the main focus will be concentrated on the issue of sanction elimination.
Earlier this year, 6 rounds of talks resulted in no formal understandings between the parties to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a 2015 deal meant to put limits on Iran's nuclear aspirations. U.S. ally Israel is warning they are prepared to use military action against Iran as one of the country's top generals called for the total annihilation of the Jewish state over the weekend.
That's Fox's Trey Yingst. A federal judge in Missouri blocks President Biden's administration from enforcing a coronavirus vaccine mandate on thousands of healthcare workers in 10 states, saying that the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid had no clear authority from Congress to enact it. The head of a major social media site is exiting the company he co-founded.
Jack Dorsey said he will step down from his executive role at Twitter effective immediately. He'll be succeeded by the social media giant's current chief technology officer, Parag Agrawal. Dorsey will remain a member of Twitter's board until his term expires next year. The 45-year-old Dorsey is one of the most prominent figures